So it's kind of
Hello,
working. Good morning or afternoon, Board Member Marcus and board members. This item is a first for me, but it's something you're very familiar with. So I'm here to announce that the 2015-2016 performance report is now available online, and it's been a long transition process, but I'll tell you a little bit about the transition, where we're headed, and some highlights. Bear with me, I've not given this presentation before. We do have a great team that's been working on this. I want to acknowledge in particular Jarma Bennett and all the work she did as part of the transition. She really did the work of many people to try to keep this alive this year as it transitioned from the Office of Research Planning and Performance to my office. So it's available, it's on the website. I was looking at it just in the audience, so it is live now. It's going to look very familiar to you. This is the 8th year of the report. It continues to try to inform the Water Board on a couple of things. One is we're hopeful that it serves to the managers of staff and programs, and hopefully it informs them on progress, things that are important to them in terms of assigning resources and what's important, or their priorities. We also think of it as a feedback mechanism to reward folks for entering their data. So having this performance report makes the system accountable for having fresh data available for everyone to see in our databases when they've done their inspections, et cetera, et cetera. And then likewise, it provides a place for our stakeholders, whether they're fee payers or the public at large, to see what we're spending our resources on, what kind of work we're getting done. It's not a complete reflection of all the work, but it is a really good one, and it's what we have, and we have some plans to enhance it a little bit. This year's performance report is very similar to all the others, and I should mention that we did take it on halfway through the season, and we didn't have a lot of staff to dedicate it to it. So we didn't spend a lot of time, I think, that would be annually spent enhancing program report cards, doing the outreach with all the programs, but we did get a couple of solicitations for changes that we helped facilitate with ORPP's help. And I should acknowledge that Dorina and Grant, while he was here, and Max and Eric and everyone has been really helpful from ORPP in the handoff. But in particular, the wetlands program and the swamp program have some new measures and cards. And the SRF, the program you just sort of heard about, the funding programs also has some new drinking water funds that are being reflected in the cards. And then other than that, a lot of the report cards that are there are things that you've seen before. So this slide summarizes the last 4 years of data, and it's really just a quick roll-up of some of the key metrics that are in the report. You see that the total number of facilities that we regulate has gone up, probably largely due to drinking water facilities coming on board, as well as general permits that are being adopted. And then the number of individual permits is also dramatically increasing over the years, probably for similar reasons. Inspections also, the trend is upward for the number of facilities that are being inspected. The compliance actions taken, similar, goes up quite dramatically. I don't have a great explanation for that, but it's an observation. And then, some of the other numbers are more reflective of just the change that's been happening with new funds of money coming in and other metrics. So this is just a roll-up. I encourage you to go look at the webpage live. I will have it also flash up here in a minute.
But the percentages have gone down, actually. If you look at the penalty compliance actions, it's not 10% of 41.
That's right. So, that's probably a reflection of the fact that it's just more permits in general that have, yeah. And we have one report card that looks at violations by program in some cases. And, that's another interesting thing, is watching that kind of a number. Is it going down because compliance is getting better, or is it going down because of data entry and other self-reporting mechanisms maybe not being as robust or accounted for as in the past? So I wouldn't strongly underline the concerns here, but some of the observations we've had in the transition are that there's some things that need to be done. This is why the program is, I think, in transition. There's always been a desire to move into outcomes, because this reflects the current report system reflects a lot of the output work that we do, but it doesn't reflect all the output work. It also doesn't reflect a lot of the storytelling and efforts that regions have been spending in particular, or divisions, on trying to solve particular problems that don't show up on a report card, right?
The quality of the thought doesn't, right.
Exactly. So, we also are facing some transitions in technology that are going to create an opportunity. They also account for a lot of the staff time that it takes to put in to generating these report cards. Right now we have a data set behind each one of those report cards that is mostly manually entered. Some of them are somewhat automated, but it's mostly manually entered. So for the 180 what odd report cards, there's a lot of manual entering of data that has to occur.
So some of these IT transition, does it mean that someday in the near distant future, I might be able, yes, I might be able to show off the performance report on my iPad?
There's a
Yes.
note to self on that one.
Unequivocally, yes.
Put it on hers. How do you get it on yours?
I don't know.
Maybe there's a little thing that just blocks it from you.
I may be.
I was warned that this would come up, by the way. Tam's going to mention that the iPad still doesn't work. Okay, so yes, we're using this as an opportunity to sort of think about some of the things, and I'll get into that. We actually have some of the things that we've been doing in OEMA relate to some of the opportunities that could enhance the report card system. So moving it towards an open data sort of framework, and I'll explain real quickly what that is, will help us focus on.
Interrupting you. Go back to the slide before. This is a really good slide, just in terms of some of the challenges of figuring out how to do a report card that's actually not just useful to tell to one audience, but that actually helps us do our job.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that. That slide may be the winner of the day.
Even though there's no data on it.
That's right, even without data. Again, quality of thought.
But that's a really good point, because what we did is we tried to pre-think what most people would want in a report card in PDS, for example, or stormwater. And it's not a one-size-fits-all. You have to make a lot of compromises to make one report card meet many different interests. And so with a new approach, and this is where I was going to go, we can focus on this type of a framework where you basically have 3 tiers of data structure. You have the flow of data being represented by the arrow, and then you have data being stored, and it could be stored lots of different ways. We have one cylinder there, but it could be 18, 20 cylinders of many different shapes and sizes and histories, so to speak. So, but they're all in that data source kind of a category. And then in the middle, we have this agile level that's called open data. And when you transform data from being in that cylinder to that open data layer, it becomes available to anyone, not just a report card that we make, but we could make 8 report cards, or somebody could make their own report card with the same data. So that third level is getting at what you're talking about, Tam, which is multiple ways to visualize data. We have one right now on our webpage, but what we really want to do is present the data to anyone so that they can create their own report cards, dashboards, whatever you want to call them, visualizations, and then they can also share it with other people and combine it with other data sets and do all sorts of different things. So this is where we're headed. This is kind of what I've been working on, and my staff have been working on the last year or so, is building and understanding this ecosystem, so to speak. And this is not a unique way to look at it. This actual diagram is very common amongst any agency or any organization that's thinking this way. So this data ecosystem.
Well, and also the need to, when you're displaying data, display other data that's relevant. I mean, I think I'm looking at Rafa, just when we first had the bubble charts and different things so you could see relative scales and stuff. It's like the one thing you can do when you have data out there is people can, I won't use the word misuse because it's data, but they can paint an unfair picture of a given issue to meet a certain need. And so could we, to make ourselves look good or not, or whatever we were doing. And so getting the quality of how you use visualization, sometimes multiple types, to illustrate the same points important, like in our monthly water conservation reports where we have the bar chart about percentages,
right,
but we also have the bubble chart about per capita use and the total amount, so that by using multiple ways of looking at the right sets of data to go together, someone has a hope of understanding what the story is.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you get it. So that's where we want to head with our performance report card system. We also want to synchronize, this is a great example of the transition. The accomplishment report is still being directed out of the Office of Research Planning and Performance. They're doing a great job. They've always done that and they're helping out. What we want to do though is to have that integrated with the whole reporting system so that our agencies and our offices, Dave Gibson's of the world, what have you, can tell all their story. Here's my inspections that I did, and by the way, here's the work that we did to protect the lagoon from fecal coliform, all on the same page, all using sort of a similar format and platform to tell their stories of their work. So we're aiming towards that and using this open data as a way to do that. And these are a lot of the benefits. I don't have to get into that, but you guys already touched on them. There's lots of different ways to use the data, lots of different ways of dashboarding it, so to speak, instead of just one. And also you can drill down to the data. So I actually have a couple of examples here.
Right.
Rafa, could you? So these are a couple of examples that Rafa helped develop that are going to look sort of familiar. So this is a data set that would be very similar to what you would see on the enforcement report card under our Water Board's performance page. What you have here, though, is the ability to interact with it. Instead of just seeing the number of violations by facility, by type, or what have you, you can actually click on a facility on a map. You can then show the data for that one facility. You can also grab a bunch of facilities, so you could draw a circle around a bunch of facilities, or you can also filter. There's a bunch of filters that you can interact with on that top right part of the map. So the point here is that this might be the dashboard or the reporting system of the future, so that it's not a static single report card, but it's the data being displayed in a way that people can dive into it and explore what they want, the way they want, or they can even download the data and take it into their own system and do what they want with it, so to speak. So this is where we're headed, and Tableau as a service, it's a software as a service. So Rafa's running this off of a cloud-based. We have a few pilot licenses in California, but there's a lot of products like this Tableau. This is not a unique way to look at data these days.
So what we might do, as opposed to a static report, though, we'd still have certain things we report for consistency, or we would a format, or we would use illustrations.
Yeah, there'd
just
still
has so much more data.
Right, we would still want to write an annual report, or maybe have a monthly or some sort of frequency of reporting where we tell our story with a series of known metrics and set principles, so to speak. But then providing a tool like this to our audience, it serves, you could see where the annual report may not serve the program manager because they don't want to wait for a year to see how many inspections they did. They're assigning resources on a weekly or daily basis. So this dual system, we could still have our static reports, but this also has the same data sets that are being used and populated and refreshed for other purposes. So I want to, you can play with this later, but I want to also flip around and show you another quick example. So we talked about the programs that are interested in working with us. One is the stormwater program. As you know, the storms strategy has an open data project that I'm helping executive sponsor. And so they've had one or two meetings with Rafa to talk about the stormwater data sets. And it looks like we had a problem on this one. Rafa, can you get the stormwater on up?
Oh, you just figured out another way to get to it.
Okay, so this is inspections for stormwater. And I want to draw your eye to a couple things. One is there's a lot of data being displayed. These are widgets, so to speak, that Rafa can assign and arrange on a page, right, or the user can. But there's also a storyboard feature. So at the top of the page, you see the dark shaded gray box and then some lighter shaded gray boxes, three of them to the right, and with left arrow or right arrow. Those are storyboards. So you can, on one sort of platform, start to confine data into a narrative. So on the first page here, we have a summary of the inspections with filters similar to that last page. You could drill down, you could understand more about a specific site, but again, you could see the roll-up. You could see the roll-up by zip code, by region, by whatever you want to do. But I'm going to quickly walk you through the story. So the next storyboard is something that might be of interest to a program manager and others, is to say, where have my inspections been done by which staff? So you'll see here that you have all the inspectors' names on the left, and you see dots for them. And so this is all the inspectors in the state. But if you chose one, for example, that does a lot of inspections, you could start to evaluate what kind of pattern do they do, and you can go by years. So there's a slider that starts to work you through 2014, 2015, and it takes you to the actual inspection, and it brings up the comment fields. So these are all data set options that we could provide more information on, as opposed to just number of inspections done by program, by region. So, and then the next storyboard frame, I'm going to march through this quickly. We can talk to you more about this later and play with it. The next storyboard, yeah, exactly. So this is looking at the facilities that are active but have never been inspected. So this is so we have 20,000 facilities enrolled in the stormwater program right now through the different general enrollments. So, we probably do an average, I'm guessing here, but it's probably about a 10% inspection pressure. That's what it used to be when I was in the program. And that means we inspect about 10% of all of our facilities. So that means 90% don't get inspected on an annual basis. Well, some have never been inspected per their enrollment lifetime. So now you could start to say, well, who deserves to be inspected? Or, are we really assigning our resources in ways that are the most efficient and the highest priority? So this is just an algorithm that says, show me all the facilities that have not had a single inspection. Put them on a map, and then it gives you the same filters. Quickly up to the top again, Rafa, let's show the last one. This one is a tool for the inspectors. So we don't want to beat up on inspectors all the time, obviously. They're the ones doing all the awesome work. How do you set your priorities for inspections? You can now select a facility and on this map, and you could use the prior maps to choose which one you might want to inspect, and then this brings in a Google view, so a Google map view. So it tells you where you can actually see it and how to get there if you need to, do that kind of work. So these are all different views of the same data set. So these are dynamic approaches to communicating the data that's a slightly different way than the prior performance report has been done. We're not going to replace the report, but what we want to do is enhance it with more information. And then we haven't even really started to talk about how to bring in the watershed stuff, but that's another thing. We hired essentially a new person to lead this performance program with the focus on outcomes. This person has tremendous skills. Bev Anderson, Abs Anderson, who used to be our harmful algal bloom lead, still is helpful on that. But she's really a watershed scientist too. So we're going to be developing outcome measures that can enhance this by being able to tell the whole story to the extent that we have data to do that. So that's where we're headed. We were happy to give you more briefing time if you want on showing you some of these data tools. And you can go explore on your own. If you figure out how to see all of Rafa's public views, you'll see 68 some odd Tableau visualizations that he's built. Some of them are water conservation, some of them are different topics. And these, once you have sort of the workflow down and the skill in your zone, so to speak, these don't take a lot of time. He can produce one of these views easily in an afternoon, maybe quite a few in an afternoon.
Wow.
So it's exciting future, but we have to build an infrastructure to get there. So then, I would bring you back to that vision of the 3 layers. We're really focused on building an agile system here so that we can have, once the open data becomes available, the possibilities are endless. But getting that level built, that open data layer on the middle level, is not a trivial amount of work. It's a lot of work. So that's where we're focused on in the next year. Any questions?
A million questions. That is very cool.
I assume the regional boards are keyed into all of this. Okay.
Yeah, and in particular, the stormwater program they were a customer, so to speak, so they asked to meet with us to develop some of these tools. Rafa's been working with them. That's how that particular dashboard set got built. We probably don't have the bandwidth to be a consulting service to every part of the organization. The model is going to be to build capacity as we go. So we want to help lead and consult as needed, but we really want to make data scientists pop up all over the organization. And so that's our model, is to work with some of the willing, the coalition of willing in the beginning, and then eventually we'll get around to everyone.
And you create the demand also elsewhere, because then everybody wants one.
Well, hopefully. It's really empowering to start learning how and seeing into your data this way, as opposed to, the number of obstacles that exist in some people's mind. They're intimidated by downloading it into Excel and creating the charts that they want. But once you sort of take some of that work out by that infrastructure I was mentioning, and make tools like what we can develop with Tableau available, then it frees up a lot of that. Instead of being a day of effort to get into their data, it takes 15 minutes or 10 minutes to get into their data.
Great. I have some ideas already. I'm going to want to talk about this. This is great. Seeing it makes all the difference in the world versus it being theoretical.
We're happy to be able to show it to you.
Except on iPad. Except on your iPad. If she can pull it up too.
Okay. Can you pull up the targets tab? I think apparently I'm having difficulty with just that tab. Targets. Where it shows how well we've met our targets in inspection, permitting, etc.
Yeah, we have nothing on those. Yeah.
Yeah, see, that one, I have nothing.
So it's just that one?
It's the one that I go to first.
But of course. I, of course, will go to the stories and the...
So I think we should talk to you and find out which data sets you want to see on an open platform first, and we'll make those our priority to shift over into an iPad-friendly platform.
That's a slippery slope you may not want to go down.
I know that we
like
didn't
challenges.
this year focus on the targets, but it's important for us to remember that the regional boards take this very seriously, and we look at setting those targets and meeting those targets as an important part of their performance, and they take it very seriously. Many of the regional boards actually have a board meeting where they describe their annual targets and how they did and why they didn't meet them, and that has taken many years to become part of the culture, and now it's part of the culture, and it's not so important to focus on at these meetings. It's now we're moving on to how do we utilize this in a more day-to-day than on an annual basis, but we shouldn't forget that that's important.
Happy to also have, are we not going to see any of that today?
I had not planned to walk you through the performance report, but we can go into that if you like.
Well, this is a question of what I'm looking at, Jonathan, in terms of, you can direct us to it because we can see it, but what are you suggesting that we should go through it?
No, what I was just suggesting is to remind the board that we didn't need to go through this because we've gone through it many years, and now it's part of the culture of the state and regional boards that they look at their performance, and I will ask for, as we move forward, that this get on the MCC so that we go over people's targets and as we move forward in the next year, just like we have in the past. We're not, all I was saying is we haven't forgotten this portion of the report, even though it wasn't focused on today.
Well, one of the things that I have found interesting about this, I mean, you can even see it on this, is the question of how are we at setting our targets, and what are the reasons why targets weren't met or were exceeded, which is not to say that the problem with red light, green light and stuff is that people then feel bad if their target wasn't met. But there's a story. Sometimes it may be that they're not setting their targets right, so you have to look at other data. Sometimes it's stuff happened that drew people off, like a drought or something like that, and so there's a story to be told.
Yeah.
It's not just the red light, green light. And I actually would be interested in not having to look at every one of these and try and guess what those questions are, but even in a briefing, a small sense of what did we learn this year from that target setting and performance process.
I'd love to
It
give
doesn't
you a
have to be
briefing.
here or now. It's just something I want to know.
Part of the challenge has been to wrap my head around what this new workload is, and even having training wheels like Rafa and Jarma who know more than I do, it hasn't sort of helped because of the bandwidth and the resource issues. We think usually there are meetings with each EO to sort of discuss their targets each year ahead of time. We plan to do that in the future. I think we missed this year. I might have even been missed in the past. I don't know, but we are trying to pick up where we left off. And I think a briefing to you would actually help me because it would provide a informal way for me to start to understand what this program is about and how you want to see information as board members. And so just that little thing you said there of, I don't want to have to click through every target card to get the story of why a region or a program is maybe not addressing their targets the way that they want. They're actually doing something better maybe. That little snippet of what you want to see is great for me to hear, because then I can help design ways for that information to flow easier to you.
Well, it's true, and sometimes the value is not even in me knowing it. The value is in that conversation between folks at MCC or with a given regional staff person to explain what happened in the year. I mean, everybody needs to be heard in some way. This becomes a vehicle.
Yeah, I know we
explaining
did
what's
talk to
going on.
some of the regions about why their targets were not met, and they had questions about, can I count a permit that didn't get issued because the permittee withdrew their application? We had it in our list of things we were going to do, but then the permittee didn't need the permit, and so that should be counted as a plus, not a minus in their mind. And so we had conversations with the
Or
regions
neutral,
about that,
taking it out of
and I think they were able to put that in their narrative explanation in that case. I don't want to name anyone, but I know where to find it if you want to see where that one is.
Let me interject here, and like Jonathan, insert a little reminder that while I think it's great that performance is now within the culture and that we're looking at targets and we're looking at performance measures and all that, the reminder that I would toss out is that at least my hope for this effort was not that we torture the regional water boards or state board program managers by setting targets and trying to meet them, but the next step is asking whether or not our resources are aligned to meet the targets that we set based on public health and water quality priorities. And so I would hope that at some point, and I know many of the budgetary issues are outside of our direct control, but at some point there has to be, I think, some linkage between how we set priorities and hopefully our flexibility to redirect resources to meet those priorities. So it's not just a punitive exercise for the regional water boards or state water board programs, for that matter, to go through set targets and then have to justify why they didn't meet those targets, but hopefully it'll become more of an empowering exercise where we say, these are the priorities that we need to meet, and how are we directing resources toward meeting them? And then, of course, demonstrating the accountability of how we use that resources and how we achieve these outcomes. So, let's not just stop at, okay, we're setting targets and we're tracking how well we're meeting our targets, but I would challenge Tom or his successor, I guess, to get us to that next step of then looking at how do we manage our resources, what flexibility we have, and how do we increase that flexibility in order to do the resource alignment. Remember the resource alignment report, that sort of was one of the driver for all of this.
And one step in that direction is actually on the showing right now that Ralph is doing, which is breaking down this happens to be at Region 5, but it's irrelevant which region. The general program areas, how much we spent on it, what we were proposing to accomplish, what we accomplished, and those kind of things. It gives you an idea when you start looking at it that we spend a lot of money on basin planning and TMDL development as compared to some of our other actions. And it describes in what it is we're trying to accomplish. So it's a one step in that direction, but it's not quite there yet.
Right, there's more than just the red light, green light, yellow light bar on this page. The eye goes right to that.
Yes, but there is more there.
Thank you for that. There is. And the narrative is important too.
Yeah, and I'll just, I echo, I appreciate what you said, Tam. That's very much in line with what I've been hearing from others, including Stuart Drone, and the Performance Council perspective that he brought in his new job to GovOps. He's using, like, he's one of my mentors in the sense that they're using open data as a vehicle to really drive data-driven or performance-based management. And it's not about punitive evaluating someone's performance. It's about improving the whole management system with the resources that you have and the priorities that you have, making it more effective and efficient and all that stuff. So that is very much ingrained in the reasons why I'm doing it. I sound like a evangelist for open data, but it's because I'm a true believer in this idea that it should be used to drive better management. So I appreciate that.
Oh, it also allows other people to help you figure things out. Again, it's all about the quality of thought. And you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't have the data, it's easy to be smart on a subset of data. All right, good. To be continued. Obviously, I think you've opened a door to more conversations with all of us, I think.
I look forward to them. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for what you brought to it.